Our next guest, a personal friend of mine for about 40 years, is Dr. Tim Murphy. Now, he's an 8-term congressman, too. He had been in Congress. He was also a military hero. He wrote this book with the idea that his experiences and his education would help many millions of people through the trauma of PTSD, of anything tragic that may have happened in their life. And according to his own statistics, 8 out of 10 people in America will undergo some form of PTSD. So this book will be helpful for you. When Christ cures, we must all take our own steps toward healing. You can, you will, you must. And this book will tell you how. So we're going to welcome Dr. Tim Murphy to the show.
Thanks for joining us here on HonorThyVote.com. You've been around a lot. You've experienced so many things throughout your life. 8 terms in Congress, a Pennsylvania senator. You were in the military. Give us a real quick synopsis for those folks around the country that may not really know you personally.
Sure. Well, I'm currently back to practicing as a psychologist, where I work with veterans and first responders dealing with trauma, PTSD. That's how I started my career as a psychologist. Then I did a lot of research articles and things like that. Worked as an assistant professor at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine, Department of Pediatrics. Had a private practice, went from there to be a state senator, elected twice, where I championed a number of healthcare issues. Then on to the U.S. House of Representatives in Congress, elected 8 times there. While in Congress, I joined the Navy, thinking if I'm voting to send people to war or they have needs, I would help them with that, so with trauma. And I worked there at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center at Bethesda and on a couple of aircraft carriers for some active duty time. But there I worked with traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress. Leaving the Navy, leaving Congress, went back to practice, and now my specialty again is working with trauma and PTSD.
And you're no stranger to trauma either yourself.
Yeah, I mean, there's been traumas in my own life growing up in a family of father was alcoholic and not the best at times, but you learn to forgive and work on issues like that, and but nonetheless, it affects you over time. Anybody who's grown up with chronic witness to or being part of abuse is part of their life, and quite frankly, being in politics is traumatic. People don't think so, but because I say, well, you're a politician, you have to put up with that. But anytime someone does something in the public eye like that, where you're constantly being battered and badgered and beat up, it's going to happen. I mean, I had death threats and attacks and things like that. I don't have to get into it. I like to rehash all that.
Right.
But all one has to do during campaign season is watch television. And you hear the rhetoric that's thrown back and forth about politicians. Hateful, nasty.
Both ways.
Threatening, both ways. Yeah, everybody does that. It's terrible. We don't like it, but people keep doing it. It's like people saying, I hate to gossip, but did you hear about, and that's what happens. And I don't like the abuse in politics, but let me tell you what's been said. And people don't look for validation or verification of the truth in any of this. They're quick to pass it on. And that hurts individuals and it hurts families. We have to remember that elected officials are human beings too.
You're evidence of that?
Yeah, I think I'm human. I think so last time I checked, but I'm a recovering politician, as I say.
All right, Doctor, let's talk about your book for a moment.
Sure.
It's Christ Cure. And this is not your first book either, right?
No, I've written, I like to say this is 3.5 books, because I wrote a book called The Angry Child. Actually, published that was I was in the state senate, and that's a carryover of a lot of work I've done with children over the years, knowing that a big concern for parents is anger in their children, what it comes from. So I wrote about the stages of anger, the characteristics of angry children, what happens to children from school and home and environment and divorce, a lot of other issues, and how we handle anger. Then I wrote a book called Overcoming Passive Aggression.
Right.
Passive aggression, of course, being the things we do and do not do to harm other people. A lot of that's what we withhold.
And don't even realize we're doing it.
Yeah. Sometimes intentional, sometimes not. Which can be harmful, and then did a revision of that a few years later, updated it. And then in 2023, published this book called The Christ Cure, 10 Biblical Ways to Heal from Trauma, Tragedy, and PTSD. And this is a different approach. Actually, in going through and healing a number of things in my own life and other aspects, I looked upon, when one is really in the depths of their own depression, and I've struggled with that too. But once in the depths, you search for some answers, and people go in a lot of different ways. Sometimes they'll seek some ways to numb the effects, alcohol, drugs, gambling, whatever it is. They go through those aspects too. Sometimes they get involved with incredibly risky behaviors, riding a motorcycle down the middle of the highway, 120 miles an hour, or adventure challenges that can be threatening. Whatever it is, people go through that. The other things that happen for people is as we're dealing with depression is sometimes I'll seek information, seek help. Now, we wish everybody would seek help, but a lot of times it's not there. What I began to do was really dig deeply into reading the Bible, trying to find some answers there.
Well, that's obvious in the book.
And by book title, yes. So what I looked at is then noticing in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul had been through a tremendous number of traumatic events. Let's listen. So he grew up in a strong Jewish family. He was a Pharisee.
Mm-hmm.
He used to hunt down these Nazarene Christians, they weren't even called Christians yet, who believed in Jesus, because Paul believed all his life that you, if you were coming up with a false Messiah or something, that was punishable by death.
By death.
So he would persecute, prosecute, execute people were that way. He writes it's written in the book of Acts, or Luke writes, that he witnessed the death of Stephen. He was the first martyr. And he stood there and said, we watched people's cloaks that took place. And then when he was headed to Damascus, he had papers with him to go and arrest a number of other Christians and bring them back for prosecution. So he would witness death. He would execute. And we know people who are executioners themselves can face trauma, especially if they realize later those they executed were innocent. Then on the way to Damascus,
I would only hope.
Yes, they would have. Absolutely. So then the road to Damascus, of course, the famous scene where, the bright light falls down. He hears the voice say, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? And he's struck blind. Now, here's a guy who spent his life, his mission, as a brilliant student of Judaism and of the Bible, attacking Christians. And now he had to do 180.
That's right.
And in that 180, those who believed and trusted and followed him before would no longer trust him. Those who didn't trust him before now don't know what to do with him.
Right.
So he's really a man without a group, without a country.
Right.
So now that's more trauma added to him. And then
he left his own religion.
That's right. Although he did believe that Jesus was the Messiah expected from Judaism. He expected that to be, but that would change later. But what occurred then following that is he now, he goes away for a couple of years in Arabia, but he had to escape in a basket out a window because the people in town were after him. He had trials in which people had false witnesses. He had a group of 40 people that pledged they were going to kill him.
Right.
There would be riots out there. He was attacked, imprisoned, beaten with rods at least 3 times. And I should say, when you're beaten with rods, there's no limit how many times you can beat someone. We don't know how much he was beaten. We know with the whippings, 5 times he was given 39 lashes. Because in Deuteronomy, it says you shouldn't whip someone more than 40 times.
Right.
So they keep it at 39. He was shipwrecked, 14 days at sea in the Mediterranean in storms, and to basically throw everything off the boat, hoping they would survive the ship being torn apart. It was torn apart. He did say he floated around in the sea for a day and a half holding onto driftwood. He was bitten by a poisonous snake. He was on trial. He was imprisoned. In Roman prison, the filth of that.
2 years.
Filth of the prison in Philippi, too. So all these things went on. So I'm looking at this and saying he's probably been through 20, 30, 40 major traumatic events, plus having to debate people, kicked out of town, run out of town. He should have had every symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder.
Absolutely.
He should have had depression and anxiety and insomnia. I would not be surprised. A person like that would have some other kind of addictive disorder, alcohol, gambling, whatever that might be. I searched for a book to talk about that, and I couldn't find anybody. Nobody had written, as far as I know, any book about why didn't Paul have PTSD. Some people have written that maybe he did, because there's a phrase where he says, I had a thorn in my side and I prayed to the Lord to take that away, but it wasn't taken away. But a thorn in the side is not the same as devastating depression. Right. So, actually, as it came out, I guess, I felt some desire, need, command to write this. And I'm not trying to elevate myself, but I'm no biblical scholar about it. What happened is I would just sit down and start to write, and the things would flow. So,
well, you're a scholar.
Well,
for sure.
But I'm not a biblical scholar.
Gotcha.
And
you've lived the life for I'm sure it's true.
Yeah. So I see those things, and I would see so many similarities. So what emerged as I'm writing this is I saying, well, Paul worked on a number of things. There was resilience. That is what he learned in his life before the battle.
Right.
What we all have. Every soldier, every human being ought to learn certain skills of resilience, like how we make sure we're building up our own strength, how we make sure we're not isolating ourselves, how we make sure we have these things around us so we can be resilient. But then in the battle, how we arm ourselves in the battle. And that is to have courage and not give in to fear is one of the key things for that. How we arm ourselves. We have a community of people to help us in the fight. How we remain vigilant of our vulnerabilities. There's a great passage in the Bible where it talks about as the men were building the walls, rebuilding the walls of the temple, they knew the enemy was out there. So they would talk about having their tool in one hand and their sword in the other. And that's what we need. So what I saw is that's something Paul was also talking about all the time. You got to be ready. So you're ready in the fight. And he talked about this term, press on. You have to continue to persevere and endure. Endurance, I see, as defense. Perseverance is offense. You got to be ready for it, just like a soldier. So that's what we arm ourselves with. The third thing is what we have to embrace in recovery. Now, a lot of people talk about recovery, especially those with addiction disorders, that recovery, the key aspects here, you have to have hope. You can't face this hopeless. You have to have something there. But you also have to acknowledge where you made a mistake. And that is to accept guilt, not shame. I write in the book, I always present these as dichotomies because that's the way Jesus presented things. It's this or this. You can't straddle the middle. So when it comes to...
and they both exist sometimes.
Yes, they both. Yeah, so we may have... What I say is that when we, through our own responsibility or something that's happened to us, because 70% of people have trauma in their lives, about 20% will have some lingering symptoms. But in this, sometimes we blame ourselves miserably for this. Of course you do. But it's if natural. It is. And sometimes we blame ourselves for things we have no responsibility to blame ourselves
exactly.
for. If I only wasn't here, this never would have happened.
That's right.
Not there. But in this, the issue being, sometimes we feel shame. Like, I'm broken beyond repair. God made a mistake when God made me. I couldn't possibly be handled this. And sometimes I'll take that shame so far as I'll even be angry at God and deny God and do all those things too.
Or suicide.
Suicide is one of the biggest things that comes with shame because you feel there's nothing else I can do.
Right.
So shame is this dead end, or it moves you only into dark spaces. Guilt, as much as we may not have to admit it, we may not want to admit it, but guilt can be a good thing because that means we're acknowledging we made a mistake. We did something wrong. We harmed somebody. We harmed ourselves. We got angry at God. And it's okay to feel guilt because then you can do something about guilt. You can acknowledge it. You can ask for forgiveness. You can make reparations to someone else. All those things are part of it. Shame, dead end, can't do anything. Guilt is action.
Right.
But what some people might want to do is, I don't want to deal with either one. So I'll just get drunk. I'll run away.
That's denial.
I'll distract, denial, all those things I won't do anything about. And none of that is helpful. And the other part then, this is a really cool part. Whenever I'm giving talks to groups at churches or community events or veterans groups, the other part of recovery is forgiveness. And you can either get a choice of forgiveness or condemnation. Again, some people try and straddle that whole thing, but you got to make a choice. And when it's condemnation, all you do is you harm yourself, harm other people, remain angry. It's like a vessel filled with poison and you keep drinking it.
It's a black hole.
Yeah, it's right. There's no way out. And people say, well, I can't forgive the person who did this to me. And I said, let's distinguish this. You don't have to forget what they did to you. You don't have to demand that they say they're sorry. But at some point you say, I have to forgive you. I have to let go of this. Because when we remain filled with condemnation, hatred, we're not going to go anywhere. So forgiveness is not letting them off the hook. It's not saying they don't face justice. It's saying someone else is going to handle that. It's saying I have to forgive and let it go. And also forgive ourselves. The 6 words I use for this in the book are God forgives. Because God forgives us. This is all paid up front. Others might. The reason I say others might is if we hang out for other people to forgive us, you may be dissatisfied. You may be incredibly disappointed. It may not happen. Because people want to gossip. People want to keep you down. People want to beat you up. People want to keep those over.
They don't want to admit that they did wrong too.
Yes. They want you to remain miserable. No matter what a person's crime is, there's a great freedom that comes when another person forgives. But you can't take responsibility for that. You try. But the other 2 words are I must. So God forgives. Others might. I must. Now, when I'm working with clients who are struggling with forgiveness, this is a very big deal. Because they say, I don't want to forgive the other person. Well, then you're carrying that anger and hatred around, and it's never going to go away. You don't get better. But if you say, I'm just going to forgive this person, or better yet, I'm going to forgive myself, you can go somewhere. Or I'm going to forgive God. Because a lot of times, like, I'm mad at God for doing this to me. He never should have happened. My child never should have had cancer. I never should have had that auto accident. My friend never should have been killed in war. But forgiving is releasing. This all relates to I forgot the other two words that come with recovery is healing. You have to make a choice of healing. And here some great stories in the Bible. When there'd be someone who's blind and Jesus said, do you want to see? Yes. Right, okay. Right. Or, the case I really loved was in John when the lame man is lying there in the pools of Bethesda. And Jesus comes in, he's there on his mat, and Jesus says, do you want to walk? And he goes, oh, you have no idea how tough this is. I don't know who you are, guy, but you see, what happens here is every time I try, I've been lame for 30 some years. Every time I try to go to the pool, people get in the way. No one helps me. This is terrible. It's terrible. So he's complaining. He's whining, but he doesn't make the decision of, Jesus said, do you want to heal or do you want to lay there? So Jesus makes it for him. Get up, pick up your mat and go. This is so important. We have to make a decision too. And in this, what I do is I will ask people when I'm working with them, one of the first things I ask them when I'm first meeting with them is, do you want to heal or do you want to hurt? And then I'm silent. And I wait for them to give me an answer. And I count the seconds in my head, how long it takes. And sometimes people will sit there a long time in silence. Says, well, is there anything else? Says, no, I'm just asking, do you want to heal or do you want to hurt? And they go a number of things. Some people say, you know what? I really want to heal. I know we're going to start making progress right away. And some people say, well, I don't want to hurt. So, well, that wasn't a choice. Do you want to heal or do you want to hurt? Or they say, well, what's involved with this? I say, we're not negotiating. Do you want to heal or do you want to hurt? You tell me what you want to do. And they say, I'm not sure. Okay, but tell me which direction you want to go in. Even if you don't know how, tell me what you want. Because Jesus didn't say to the lame man, do you think you might want to walk or not? Or the blind, you want to just need glasses? He would ask these questions. This is so fundamentally important for us to get better from trauma.
Make the decision.
Make a decision. And that's a tough decision.
Right.
Very tough. That's why sometimes we delay.
Even to understand that you have the power to make the decision.
Yes.
That's the toughest part.
And a person who's grown up in trauma and told all their lives, you're worthless, you're no good, you can't do this. Think of how empowering it is to make the decision. And I said, you don't have to know the way. You just tell me which way you want to go.
Right.
I won't help you go towards hurt, but I will help you go towards healing. The fourth stage, and this is really important. So remember I said you build your strength in resilience. You arm yourself in resistance in the battle. You embrace the healing, the forgiveness, the guilt, all those things there. But the fourth one is you accept. This is renewal. And this comes from Romans 12:2 when Paul writes, to be transformed by a renewing of the mind. Transformed. Not just a little bit changed. Not just feeling better. Not just taking some medication, but transformed. This is a big deal. And so here's the four things that Paul really tells us about. Faith. You have to accept faith. 2, accept trust. 3, accept grace. That God loves you. No matter what, He loved you before you even thought about you. All those things have been there, but you got to accept that someone loves you. And that's really tough when we are traumatized. Right? So we're filled with hate and everything else. And the fourth one is then have a mission in life. Turn that into action. Go help other people. Go help yourself. Or go on and do something. So what I saw Paul doing, what we can all learn from at any time, is that when we work on our resilience, our resistance, our recovery, and renewal, wow, it is a major change for us. And that's where I see people who are affected by trauma can make a big, big difference in their life, or they can struggle for years. But that means where this book is different, and me as a psychologist, a lot of psychologists don't want to talk about faith. In fact, we're told don't talk about that stuff. But about 60% of people, when they see a counselor, if they're religious, they want their counselor to talk about it. But if their counselor doesn't talk about it, you think, well, this is taboo. I can't go over this.
Afraid to even ask.
Something's wrong here, so maybe it's not a good idea. But it really is. The most psychologists, I think about 50% say they're atheists or agnostics. I think it's zero training in this. And they think, well, I can just do this without talking about faith. I say, no, you can't. No, you can't. You can't say, I'm an auto repair mechanic, but I've never worked on a car and I don't believe in cars. Well, you ought to step aside. I was giving a talk once to a bunch of counselors about PTSD, and this was during the height of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I asked the audience, how many of you want to work with veterans and military people with PTSD? And all the hands went up. That's why they were there. Because how many of you are against this war and felt we never should have invaded? A bunch of hands went up. I said, okay, you can be here, listen, but don't ever talk to a veteran about this. You're
That's
not
right.
qualified, because they'll see right away that you believe what they did was wrong. So my point is, counselors are not training. So this book is really to help them. Counselors understand how to work with people, but it's also there for clergy. Most clergy have no training in counseling. In fact, only about 15% feel they're adequately trained to counsel someone with severe mental illness. So it's I call it a handbook for the broken and the people who love them, because sometimes the individual's not ready to be changed, but the family wants to support them.
Sure.
And for counselors and clergy who want to understand that nexus between biblical teachings and the science of psychology and change. So that's a lot of information there, but that's where this all comes.
Well, there's a lot of it we're going to find out who will be the next president of the United States. And if the polls are accurate, that it's so close, that means half of the country is going to be traumatized. Any advice for them besides picking up the book and reading for it?
Well, let's go through this, because someone may see this well after there's election, but I suspect our country's going to need a lot of healing, because this isn't just vote for a person. It's vote for a concept, vote for principles. And what has been thrown back and forth by both sides has been a lot of really negative, vituperative comments. This isn't just, I disagree with you. This is people saying hateful and nasty things. A lot of them is truth out there. So when we see our leaders behaving this way, it naturally is going to trickle down that people say, well, this is okay to speak this way. And so people's, see people who don't even want to talk anymore. Relatives don't want to talk anymore. Friends don't want to talk.
How
It's so
terrible is
divisive.
that? That's trauma right there.
It's certainly, our words have been turned to trauma triggering words. I mean, we use the word trigger for all kinds of things now. Oh, you ordered ice cream. I hate ice cream. I'm triggered by that. But it's a lot of other things too.
Pronouns.
That take place, right? Our pronouns. People get triggered by that. We've lost the ability to manage stress. Look, life is stressful. Going back to Jesus, he said, listen, I want to break the news to you guys. This is going to be really bad for you. And only one of you is going to live to the old age. The rest of you are going to be tortured and you're going to die by this. But that's what we need to look at too. What Paul gives is this very hopeful message. Like, no matter what happens, our suffering is small compared to what happened to Jesus when he paid up his run. So as we're looking at the election season, we have a number of things that have to heal. So what I said there in terms of how we treat each other, which means we have to also forgive.
That's right.
This is going to be tough.
And accept.
And accept that this is the outcome. This is America. I suspect whoever wins, there's going to be accusations of violence on all sides, of improper behavior at polling places. Are things accurate? One of the first casualties of war is truth. Now, in this case, what's going to be a casualty of this election is trust. Leaders have undermined their own ability to bring out trust for leadership. So whatever side has won, they'll say, well, I don't trust this other side, or I don't agree with this election, or something's wrong. And after the last election, you saw people saying, well, Trump is not my president, or Biden is not my president, or whatever else that goes on there. And the same thing will happen here too. But here's some other healing. There's some awful things that have happened in the United States in the last few years. You have millions of people who have crossed the border, undocumented, and many terrorists that we know of, captured and released, some set out. There have been many criminals, some captured and released, some returned. Yep. We have seen the number of cases that have been out there of murders and sexual assaults, and people put out on bail. Yep. All sorts of things taking place.
Yep.
We've seen cities say, well, we're no longer going to prosecute if it's less than $900. So everybody goes into Walmart and steals things and things like that.
Stores are going to close.
Yep.
People will lose their jobs as a result of that.
More homeless, huge amounts of homeless. And of course, the trust of whether or not people should be voting if they're not American citizens. They're not supposed to by law.
Right.
But we've already heard there's some action there. But there's also, this is one of the most troubling things to me, 300,000 plus people have been sex trafficked to this country.
Right.
Now, if you look at, and I get this data that has come from a PBS program where it was portrayed in terms of how many actual slaves were brought to the United States from the 1600s to 1865 when Lincoln said no more slaves, set them free. And it's a little over 300,000.
We've already exceeded that.
We've exceeded that. And those are numbers that 300,000 comes from a number of things, particularly Health and Human Services, so HHS and some of the documentation. But those numbers are how many come over each year. We've far exceeded the number of slaves, of children and adults today. So what is of grave concern is the government hasn't done anything about this. This should have been the full force of every law enforcement agency to find everybody out there. But for us to say we're going to let these kids suffer, these women suffer,
We should be appalled by this.
We should be incredibly angry.
Move to action.
And so what we hear is people going back over what happened in the Civil War, pre-Civil War and slavery, awful times. But that was over 100 years ago. We have this in real time now, what's taking place. And it's very disturbing that it's not been a campaign issue. I mean, this should have been out there all the time. Where are these children? Where are these women? Where are these young boys? We know that many of the drug cartels took family members and held them hostage in Mexico or other countries and said, we're going to take all your money, drop you off in the United States. And so what they find is the only way they can survive there is become either part of the drug cartel network, selling more drugs, more fentanyl, or being involved in one of these sweatshops or brothels or whatever it is, these awful things that take place. And these people have disappeared. This is part of the healing that we better come together. And I think that's one of the places we ought to come together as Americans and say, can we at least agree to not harm the children? This is massive, and it has to take place.
It's our future. It's the future of mankind. You know, what we're doing to kids and what we're allowing to have happen to kids and even the abortion rate. It's just, where are we? What is our thinking? We're going to disappear as a human race unless we turn things around.
Right. And this has happened in the history of human beings, human race, that as a nation has grown its ability and education and its wealth, it reaches some point where it stops paying attention to how you got there.
Right.
And we see schools no longer want to teach history in the United States. They have schools who don't want to teach the history of World War II. What happened there? What happened with Nazi Germany? What really is fascism? What really is Nazism?
Besides a bad word to use against your opponent.
What's communism? Now people say, well, I embrace communism. Or they're anti-religious. And I say, well, wait a minute. Why are you anti-religious? Well, you look at the number of deaths that occurred from that. Well, actually, if you look at the deaths that occurred from atheists and communists, like Stalin and Lenin and Pol Pot and Mao Zedong and so many others, hundreds of millions. Far more have been killed under those circumstances than have been killed in all the religious wars over time. But we can't keep going over the past that way. We have to find this common ground. Now, it's going to be tough for whoever is elected president and tough for Congress to say we have to let these things go. It's very difficult. And even in doing so, it takes years to do that. So I'm hoping whatever happens with these elections that you see leaders doing this, and this ought to be the demand of the people. And it'll be the demand of media. But quite frankly, a lot of people don't trust media anymore to do that because they will rehash this over and over and over again, either from the smugness of saying, I told you so, or saying, oh, this is terrible and we will not trust the new leader. So this is going to be up to individuals to rise up from the grassroots and saying, we're not going to do this anymore. I hope people can do that. I hope religious leaders can do that. I hope citizens
podcasts.
There you go. Where people really talk about these things and say, I want our nation to heal. We'll see what happens.
And starting with your book.
I hope so. I mean, my book
gives an outline.
It does. It gives an outline of what people can do individually because we have to start with our own health.
Oh, yes.
I mean, even such things as physical health. You have to be in physical shape. You have to have proper sleep. I believe that people should be meditating and mindfulness and prayer and take time every day for that. We have to have healthy diets. I mean, who would have thought that America being healthy again becomes part of the campaigns to talk about this? Right. So Robert Kennedy is the one that brought that up. He may be a lone voice in the wilderness, but he's talking about that.
It's a good voice.
Yeah, so we look at these fitness, attitude, sleep, mental training, keeping our mind sharp, healthy eating, relaxation, are all part of the healing process. But this book, as you've pointed out, is not just for the individual trauma that we identify, and life threatened or something else like that. But trauma can also be a prolonged exposure to extreme stress, which we've been under. They say about a third of Americans right now admit to having sleep problems related to the campaign. About 40%, 45% of Americans have talked about stress levels. Stress levels have gone up over the last 30 years across America. Sleep, getting enough sleep, that's 7 to 9 hours of sleep every night, that has gone down. We know as sleep is a problem, health problems go up, trauma reaction go up, depression, anxiety go up. It has an effect on the brain, and we need that time to heal. So I'm hoping whoever's in there that we have a solid secretary of HHS. We have someone who's really, remember, there used to be this thing, the President's Physical Fitness Program. I remember Kennedy really emphasized that. Sure. Every student has to do this stuff. You don't hear about that anymore. Our obesity rates have gone up. All these things for children need to change. And I hope leadership is there to say, we're going to talk about what's healthy for America. We're going to talk about what's good for America. And that's part of healing for America.
Mm-hmm. Being a good first lady to lead us in that march.
Someone to do that, all that's those right. levels. But it's going to take a lot of guts on the part of politicians. Say, we're going to work together. Now, that doesn't make good sound bites. So, depending upon which station you watch, there's MSNBC, CNBC, CNN, Newsmax,
or none of the above,
that they each will admit that they have their audience and they play to their audience. And I get that because they want to have ratings, they want to have publicity, they want to have commercials on it.
That's how it works.
And that's how it works, and that's how they get paid. But somehow in this country, what I talk about, and this is where I think this helps with regard to where it lay out in the book, that if people understand that they turn towards their faith and understand that and know it, and the energy has to come from ourselves. We can't wait for the other person. I think of it this way. If you know a house is starting to smoke and there's a fire in there, you call the fire department for help, yes. Sure. But if you know that there's someone in there and you rescue them, do you go and rescue them? Or do you stand back and say, oh, it's too bad. I could have done something, but I didn't. Well, that's where we are. We have to be willing to rescue ourselves and rescue each other, being honest and humble and forgiving. That's going to be tough. But that's the only cure that I see happening for our nation.
Well, there's a call to action right now. Mm-hmm. You know, it used to be that people would complain about they did this and I'll wait until they take care of it. Mm-hmm. We are they in today's culture.
And to do nothing is to do something.
Yes, it becomes complicit, you know, with the bad deeds that you're complaining about.
Right.
Doctor, you've been a great help. Really. You keep up the good work.
Thank you.
And any more political aspirations?
No, I'm done with that. I'm recovering from that. I did. It was an honor to serve. It was a real honor to be able to be voted by people to do that. And I was able to accomplish some mighty things in the area of reforming the mental health system.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's right.
There's much to be done. Mm-hmm. But we, as I say in my bill, we didn't get everything we wanted, but we wanted everything we got. And there's still much more because America still has some huge problems with mental illness. Half of kids admit to some kind of anxiety or depression. Those are massive numbers. We need to heal. Right. So I'm hoping we can continue to do that. And I'll work with anybody who wants to work on those things. But for now, I'm trying to teach others to do that at this stage of my life. Be one who is a mentor for others and help other people have some energy, willing to get in the ring. I've done my time. I've got my scars, got my lashes, but I hope other people can step up and do that with strength and courage.
Let's hold this book up so for everybody sees The Christ Cure, 10 Biblical Ways to Heal from Trauma, Tragedy, and PTSD in Politics.
There you go. And I have a website, drtimmurphy.com. That's drtimmurphy.com. But that's available on Amazon or other places too. And I hope people like it. They can reach me through my website and tell me what they think. I'd love to hear from people.
Good comments. Thank you.
All right. God bless.
All right.